welcome everybody. My name is Carol Bideau and I'm the producer of National Lampoon's Counterintelligence. And I'm here today with James Farwell, the prolific writer and somebody who I've really enjoyed working with in the last few years. So James, introduce yourself and let the world know about you.
I'm James Farwell, and I'm the author of this screenplay. Carol has been a great asset in my life. She's managed to keep me off the streets and out of jail, for which I'm eternally grateful. We've actually had a great deal of fun together doing work. And, the thing about movies is that those of us who like movies, and I have ever since I was 11 years old, I have a sensibility that makes us love movie people. It's why we refer to ourselves as film people. It's really true. We're just obsessed with it. We're obsessed with it as an art form, as a vehicle for entertainment, for expressing ideas, for articulating notions that are relevant to the world, that enlighten, improve, and entertain all at once.
So James, tell me and the audience a little bit about how did you start this whole project of the counterintelligence? And your background is in counterintelligence, and we can't really tell you anymore because he's going to have to kill us all. So, but just tell us a little bit about how you got inspired and everything to do this film.
It's a great question. Well, in looking at different ways to counter-message terrorists, I've looked at the way people around the world have done things and looked at vehicles for reaching a mass audience that could influence and shape behavior. And what I'm especially interested in finding are very positive role models that can shape behavior. And that led me to Bollywood, whose movies I've always admired. Bollywood's as an art form is rooted in legends and myths and folk tales, and it has its own particular form that has evolved over the years. It really has shifted initially from socially relevant topics such as anti-colonialism. We saw that in a movie that was made years ago called Lampoon, which was about British colonialism. The British tax collector wanted to tax a village which didn't want to be taxed. So, of course, the village challenged the British authorities to a game of cricket. And if they lost the game of cricket, they paid the taxes. And if they won the game, which of course they did, then the British tax collector would have to back down. So it moved initially through a process in the 1950s towards an emphasis on more socially relevant things to more entertainment, which you saw in the 70s. In which there was more of a focus on family-oriented. By family-oriented, I mean the subject of family as opposed to Walt Disney family-oriented movies. And then it moved from there into something that sort of replicated what we saw in the 90s in the United States, where you had a lot of action movies with a lot of violence, an increasingly permissive attitude towards sex, not that it's permissive by Western standards. And today, the Bollywood films are very eclectic. And I find the art form fascinating. It's, on the one hand, it's very positive, which appeals to me. It's very romantic. It's very cheeky and funny. It takes pride. It'll break the fourth wall in talking to the audience directly. It doesn't matter whether this is a love story or an action story. It'll switch into dream sequences. Music is an integral part of Bollywood, as it is in Indian life. When a baby is born, that birth is greeted with music and drums. People sing for rain in the rural areas. They sing when there's a harvest. The mailman sings. People who deliver milk sings. There is an integral part of life in India that uses music, and that has translated itself brilliantly into the art form of cinema.
So James, tell us a little bit more of the story of counterintelligence.
The counterintelligence is true to the Bollywood format in that it's a morality tale with a lesson at the end. It plays on one of the themes that you'll see in Bollywood films, which is sibling rivalry. It's just that we've played it for fun. And we've also used it to make comments on the absurdity of allowing men to run the world who want to have nuclear weapons, which are treated by them as toys, almost as if they don't really exist and without any regard to what they can do. And it's the women, and there are two very strong female characters in this who step in respectively to stop men from their access of the use of these things. And it's lots of fun. There's lots of, at one level, there's serious social commentary, but it's all done with our tongue in our cheeks, and it consciously, self-consciously breaks every convention I could think of in cinema to create a thoroughly cinematic experience. On the one hand, it uses wit and sophisticated dialogue. Too many romantic comedies today, I think, use toilet humor. This is the opposite of that. It has very sophisticated wit, lots of physical humor, but also lots of visually cinematic humor. It uses a visual vocabulary for a lot of its wit. And it's the combination of these things and the integration of music by A.R. Rahman that I think makes this unique and distinctive, but done in a way that's completely accessible and relevant to a Western audience.
Tell us, what two films would you think are very similar in style or in theme to that what we're trying to do with counterintelligence?
You know, this really is a unique property. David Bruskin, who was the senior story editor at 20th Century Fox, who's been a dramaturg for us, said that in the 200,000 scripts he's read, he's never seen a script that's anything like that. And so it is something you haven't seen before. But two movies, one a little bit older, one more contemporary, that I think in terms of its spirit contains some elements that would be like this. A Fish Called Wanda with Kevin Kline and Jamie Lee Curtis made years ago was completely unconventional. The characters were completely wacky, yet they were very vivid and intelligent, and you could relate to them. And it was very funny because they did things that you wouldn't expect characters to do. One that has a more conventional format, but the characters are a little surprising, is the remake of Get Smart. And Steve Carell is really responsible for why that movie worked. When he worked with the producers and the screenwriters, he said, listen, in the original Get Smart TV series, Maxwell Smart, the character of it, is sort of a dummy who stumbles into solving problems. And Carroll correctly thought that that was not a good idea. His view, which is mine as well, is let's play up to an audience, not down to it. So he instructed that his character be made very, very, very smart. And he is. In a 500-page report, he'll remember a footnote on page 333, and he's appalled when his superior will say, well, have you thought of this thing? And he'll say, well, sir, didn't you read footnote 21 on page 333 where we went into all of this stuff? And that sets the tone for the kind of person so that when he's doing unusual things, it's rooted in his character and a value of discipline and hard work. And Anne Hathaway is really the foil that plays off against him. And that's a movie in which I thought that she did this very well. And the movie works partly because although there are wacky elements to it, they're intelligent. And I think that what really matters in a comedy is that on the one hand, it has to be rooted in truth, but on the other hand, it has to have plausible characters whose own perception and actions create a believable world that may be completely crazy, but rational within the context of that suspension of disbelief. And that's what we do in this particular case.
Yeah, no, I will say that it is a romp from the first page, and you just never know what's going on. But that's life working with James Farwell. You never know what's going on, and you keep everybody on their toes. And it's really, I think that the audience will just really have a lot of fun. So just to bring it to light to the audience also, how has all this COVID time changed, or how is it affecting your work and, during this time?
Well, of course, as a writer, one sits at a computer and looks at blank pages and tries to fill it up with things that don't make you look like the complete fool that we all feel that we are. Writers go through these very paranoid states. On the one hand, we think that what we write would turn Shakespeare green with envy, and then we give it to other people who think that it's suitable for wrapping fish. And so one tries to find a medium in which you are doing things. For myself, I must say that I do have very definite points of view about this. I really believe in characters that are rooted in very strong, very clear values. And I also believe in characters, even the bad guys, have very clear values. The bad guys in this movie are just as much fun as the hero. They always say that villains are more interesting than protagonists, and certainly there's some truth to that. It can be more fun, I suppose, to work for the evil empire than for the Federation. All the Federation can do is sit around and be holier than thou, while the evil empire has a good time blowing up planets and yucking it up, all in the name of hubris. But I believe in having characters that are strongly drawn. One of the things that I do, I think especially well, is I draw very strong female characters. And this movie has two of them. But Tamir, who is the lead character and who is jealous of his brother, who is the Maharaja and wants to displace him, is a very particularly detailed character, as is his sidekick Zaza. And part of the trick in this was to keep this romantic and fun. It's not a movie, for example, about terrorism at all. It is really a love story. And it's totally about one brother looking up to his older brother and trying to best him in whatever way that he can. And he breaks all the conventions. He's not interested in money because he's smart. He's already made money. He wants to be a big man on campus. And so he's looking for ways to sensationalize himself so that he, who is insecure, essentially can get attention from people. This guy feels neglected. His brother is the one that everybody reveres. And his attitude is, wait a minute, I'm here too. And so the movie has a lot of fun with dealing with the foibles that Tamir does. And all of these characters have arcs, and they all move through one phase or another. And they eventually come to periods of self-revelation as to who they are and what they are. And I think that's very important, because at the end of a morality tale, there has to be a lesson that's learned, and everybody has to take truth from the lessons that become manifest.
What's one of the lessons that you want the audience to go away with?
Well, I think that there are two of them. One is that crime doesn't pay, the futility of crime, which is a traditional theme of Bollywood movies. Remember that we're using the form of Bollywood, but we wanted to draw on as many traditional elements as we could, but just to translate that into a different form, rooted in but thoroughly distinct from your traditional Bollywood movie. This is a movie that has to have high production values. One of the problems with a lot of Bollywood films is that they're done on a very small budget, and while the choreography for the dancing is usually very good, the music is often interesting, but they don't really do the technical side of a lot of their movies as well as we need it to be. But again, going back to your notion of what are the lessons, one of them is crime doesn't pay. I think the other one is that ultimately love does pay off, that love does conquer the forces of darkness, which again is a traditional theme of Bollywood. And of course, there is the absolute of the commoner finding out that the person he's fallen in love with secretly is a princess, because we always want to have a protagonist, whether it's a male or a female, find out that the person they fall in love with, whom they thought was a commoner, really is a prince or a princess. And so this one pays respect and homage to those forms, but articulates it in a very different way that will break convention and entertain and surprise and delight, which is what you want to do with comedy.
Great. Well, James, let's leave everybody with my Proustian question that I love to throw at creative people. Because I think it gives you a lot of hindsight into who you are and what your life beyond the screen pages. So when and where are you happiest?
Well, talking to you, Carol, I mean, that should be self-evident to anybody watching this.
Besides that.
You always reinforce my completely perverse sense of genius. And the other thing is it gives me the opportunity to test out my lines to make sure that they work. And I unerringly do that before my two Labrador retrievers. I tend to prance up and down in workout clothes and recite lines. And they look at me and they seem to be very interested, especially as I get closer to a jar that's full of cookies. So
I definitely would say, as somebody that has been working with you, that you're, I think one of your happiest is when you're putting on the page all these unbelievable, and just out of the box ideas. And it's a joy to work with you. And our other partners in this, Jerry Daigle, Frank Hart, and Shandu Shah. And I thank you and Bella Productions for taking me on this wild ride. And we hope to take the audience on this wild ride with us very, very soon. So thank you, James. And we'll continue this conversation in the next phase of production.
Well, thank you. Before I leave, I do want to say one thing, and you've touched on it, and that is that this notion of auteur filmmaking is a fantasy. One of the reasons I think that this screenplay turned out to be as good as it is that I had a lot of help from you, from Jerry, the other producers, from David, and other people and other friends in the business who read the screenplay, made a lot of detailed suggestions, and we improved it through doing that. The performing arts requires a team effort. And you asked me what I enjoy so much. One of the things that I love about the performing arts is that it is a team effort. And if a product at the end, a work of art at the end, achieves a very high level of achievement, it's because a lot of people with a lot of talent unceasingly contributed to it, insisted that it be the best that it could be. And I think that's why this works. It's why I've written, as you know, an opera that's going to open in the West End in London next year, which is also a comedy. And it's really a play with opera music instead of show tunes, magic instead of dancing. And there too, I again had lots of help from incredibly brilliant people. It'll be a great opera. It's an opera, but we won't brand it that way. But it's the same thing here. You've been great, but everybody on this team has contributed in different ways. And I think that's the difference between success and failure, both in life and in the creation of counterintelligence, which I think is fun. And I think that people will enjoy. I hope that they will anyway. I'll probably hide on opening night just in case they don't. And then courageously step forward and take credit with a smile and a wave, put the sun in my face and a cool breeze at my back in the event that they do like it.
They'll enjoy
Thanks
it.
for having me aboard.
Yeah, no, it's I think that this is really a lot of fun for me, and I just wanted to share part of what we do on a regular basis is just chat and talk about the scripts, and again I thank you, and we'll continue these conversations more.
I look
Thanks, James. All right, bye.
Bye.